Welcome to IMAGI-NATION TV. My name is Drew Paten. It's a real pleasure to be here today and host alongside some incredible people. I'm the co-CEO for AIME, and it's a really great pleasure to sit with so many great humans. So today we're exploring the CEO for Good model. What happens when CEOs work towards common good, and how do we make sure our boardrooms, our executive leaders and decision makers have not only a seat at the table, but are the ones holding devise solutions and outcomes. There's a quote by an amazing human, Vernā Myers, and it goes like, diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. Joining us today, we have an incredible speaker. He goes by the name Paul Smith. Paul Smith is one of the great humans that has come across the AIME lands, and he is the founder of Future Directors Institute. Fun fact, Paul, I know you're about to jump in here, but Paul has got an amazing experience and has done some incredible things throughout his life. He's an award-winning author of the book Right Seat, Right Table, an outsider's guide to securing the ideal board role. Serves on a number of boards, including the vice chair of the Jane Goodall Institute Global, international nonprofit dedicated to expanding the legacy of the iconic conservationist and UN Messenger of Peace, Dr. Jane Goodall. Paul, brother, how are you today?
I am great, brother. Drew, it's awesome to see you again. Always love hanging out.
Thank you. It's really great that you're here. I would love you to share who you are. What is it you do? What are you about? Tell us everything.
You've given me and everybody else the job title, founder of Future Directors Institute, but let me tell you what that really is. We're all about changing the face of the boardroom. The boardroom is really a very pale, mostly male and stale environment, and we're trying to change its face by making sure we see more of those mis and underrepresented groups, where they're young, people of colour, people with a disability getting into the boardroom, being listened to and shaping where companies are going. Boardrooms have this tremendous power and influence for everything from startups and not-for-profits through to big corporates, listed, unlisted, all around the world. And our job is to bring this community together internationally, these non-traditional outsiders, and equip them, empower them and support them. And that's what we've been doing since we launched Future Directors. And it's really cool.
That is really cool. And what do you think has been one of the challenges for you? One, founding a company, but two, wanting to lead and create so much change within boardrooms?
Oh, that's such a great question, which I was wholly unprepared for. Personal challenge is, I'm at a personal level, I'm an ideas person, right? All my strengths, or everything I am, I'm a visionary. That's labels that have been assigned to me rather than personal labels, by the way. I'm a creative person. I love getting stuff going. The problem is I'm really bad at seeing it through. So I have to surround myself with people who can do that. But when you're starting out, you don't have the funds to do that, to get going if you're bootstrapping it out like we're down. And I can see Nicole nodding her head. She and I have been going in business for about the same time. So it's getting up to speed as quickly as possible and surrounding yourself. But you also learn so much about what you're good at and what you're not good at when you go through that process. At a more macro level, there's so many different issues we have around the boardroom in terms of helping get those people in. But the biggest problem really is with helping the individuals themselves that we support and in their confidence. What we're really selling is confidence. That confidence that you actually belong in the room, you have something to offer, you can have a voice. when most of the rooms you're entering do not look or sound or come from the same background as you. So that's the biggest hurdle for most people, and that's why it's all about storytelling.
Yeah, it's really special, Paul, and I couldn't agree more with you. One of the challenges that I've had to face internally for myself being in this co-CEO role is often one, being the youngest in the room, and stepping into rooms and with stepping into rooms with CEOs, managers, and all these wonderful people that have spent the last 20, 30, 40 years researching and working so hard to get to where they are. But one of the, as I said, the challenge is often feeling like you're inadequate walking into that room, but in fact it's a power. And I've had a good chat with a good mentor of mine, and thankfully a general manager here at AIME, Taryn Marks, and it's something that she's highlighted to me time and time again, is that the voice of young people is so fresh and so invigorating that it's often such a compliment to these spaces. And so that's such a cool thing that you're doing, and really looking forward to seeing what you do more of. I do have a couple more questions for you, Paul. I'm really keen to know what you're most proud of.
Oh, I think it's just the work that we're doing, Drew. The work we're doing to support these people, the changes we're seeing. Like, our theory of change is all about the individuals in the room being those champions, being the change agents. It's going to take years for this to happen, but the people we're supporting now are going to be the big leaders later on. We're starting them earlier. And it's very similar to my own journey. I started out in my early 30s as a board director, which compared to what we're doing with AIME and what we're talking about here is actually quite old. But the average age of board directors in most around the world is 62, and board young is defined as under 50. So in your early 30s, that's young. But it's sort of when you get inside there, and this is what we're really proud of, you just see people starting to make that difference once they've got over that hurdle. We just getting these stories coming back of the influence they're happening. They're being invited to chair boards, even when they're the youngest person, because they've got something really valuable to offer. It's that different perspective. It's those new ideas. It's a different risk appetite. I've always liked using the phrase, it's that wisdom of inexperience blended with the wisdom of experience, where it's that you're coming in almost like a blank slate, not to represent young people or represent people of color or there's a little bit of that, and that burden can be put on you, but really you're there to bring something really fresh. But the challenge is boards have to want that, and vulnerability is not a trait of most boardrooms. So that's one of the things we're trying to overcome as well.
Yeah, that's huge. That's definitely huge. I want to introduce the panel. We've got some incredible people here. We've got Nicole White, who is one of the great humans at the ID crowd. We've got our former co-CEO and now educator, Charisse Jackson. Our friend Craig has just disappeared, but he'll be back. Craig's all the way in Zimbabwe, and he's one of the IMAGI-NATION ambassadors here at AIME. And Shreya is another great human. She's currently doing a test, which is like just amazing that she's going to do a test, then run back to do an interview with all of us. So props to her, and we'll hear from her shortly. But Nicole, Sherice, would love to hear from you both. Quickly what you guys do now, and I'd love to open up to an open discussion and let's have a bit of a yarn.
Nicole, you can go first.
I love that you came off mute to tell me that I could go first. Okay, so my name is Nicole White. Everyone calls me Nick. So please do that as well. So I'm the CEO and founder of a company called the ID Crowd, as you mentioned, Drew. I had the company for about 8 years, and we kind of specialize in adult education. And I started the business because there was just some really, really bad adult learning experiences out there in the world, particularly in the workplace. And a lot of the time I actually see some really cool things happening at school and university level. And I think about this, this this kind of cohort of really beautiful minds kind of coming through and growing and being all open and wonderful, and then just coming to a screeching halt when they hit the workplace because we're still making e-learning with too much content and an X button and calling that a learning experience. So that was kind of how it started. But I've got a background in psychology, and one of the things that I've always really loved is being able to work on projects that actually not only like the joy of creating good education is that it can create real change in the world. And so, you know, being able to say that you work on projects that are about, you know, increasing the likelihood of prisoners using Hep C treatment, like actually accepting Hep C treatment, is huge. And, you know, trans health is another kind of piece that we're working on at the moment as well. So being able to kind of take that, not accepting crappy learning, and then actually using that for good to actually make change in the world, that's kind of what I love. It's my jam.
Yeah, that's really cool. So cool. What do you think, Nicole? What do you think is like? Yeah, where do you see, I guess, the ID crowd moving forward with learning and education?
I love that. It's actually a really good question to ask after, like, we're 8 years old and kind of getting to that point. Like when we first started, it was me. It was actually just me sitting in a tiny little office in Newtown, and I had 4 desks, but I didn't have any staff yet. So it was basically just me with the door open, with anyone who walked past with me, just kind of going, "Do you want to please talk to me? Human contact, please." So you can see how much I'm probably struggling with lockdown then, being in Sydney. Human contact, please. But we've like grown in kind of leaps and bounds, and it's really interesting at the moment. Like we're at about 16 people, which is a whole new challenge in itself. And every single year, every single minute, day, whatever, but every single year there's a big change that kind of happens as you kind of grow and get bigger. And one of the things that we've been concentrating on now has been how we work and the environment that we create as a company, and how people actually do their best work. And so that's what we've been focusing on now, so that we can just do more and more of what we have been looking at. And it is about just finding your people from a customer basis. I think, Sherice, we were kind of like kicking around the scariness of going into a boardroom, you know, before all of this started. But one thing that kind of popped into my mind is that more and more we're finding our people in terms of, we've got shared values, and they care about creating good learning as much as we do. So it's more and more finding those people and doing more and more of this great work that actually creates change.
Yeah, so special, and it's really great to hear the ambition of the ID crowd. Charisse Jackson, welcome back, my friend. It is really great to have you here. I'd love to hear from you on, since the co-CEO role, what you've been up to, and I'd love to hear about the jump to education.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, my name's Charisse Jackson. I am a former AIME employee. I worked for AIME for like 4 years or something in a couple of different roles. I got from program manager to center manager, and got the opportunity to be the last co-CEO. So it's really exciting to see Drew on the call as the current co-CEO. So I'm really, really proud of you. Yeah, so since then, I've actually started working at TAFE. So during my time at AIME, I was studying a Bachelor of Primary Education. I'm still doing that very slowly, but I'm going to get there eventually. This whole COVID thing's been a bit crazy, and you know, I think I've got to take care of my mental health. So I've been doing half units and just taking it slow, because teaching's always going to be there. But yeah, I've been working in the TAFE space. So working with students in Western Sydney, Aboriginal students in Western Sydney, and just working to support them. My passion's always been with education. It's always been supporting young people through education. And like I said, I've had experience in the primary space, and AIME really allowed me to work with both high school students and university students. So for me, TAFE was the only place that I hadn't really been in that, you know, that secondary space. So yeah, I've just been there and I've been loving it, and just working with community for community. It's something that is really a passion of mine. So that's what I've been up to.
That's really cool, Sherice. Yeah, it's amazing to know and hear that. Yeah, one, we have another really great educational leader coming through the ranks that are going to end up in educational sphere. So that's really cool. I'm going to put you in the hot seat here, Charisse Jackson, which I know it's nothing strange or nothing out of the ordinary to you, being the former co-CEO. I'd love to ask you a question, I guess, almost based on, I guess, the field of Nicole White and Nick White and Paul Smith. What do you think the future of education looks like, Sherice?
What a great big question, Drew. Thank you for that. The future of education. I think, like, historically, education's been such a boring space. I know going through school, it was a very boring experience for me. I can't talk on behalf of all educators, but something that I really want to push and I want to change is making a learning space for all students, trying to cater to all different learning styles and all different learning needs. So I think that education needs to be more hands-on. It needs to be more inclusive. It needs to be something that every student can kind of get something out of. You know, some students just sit there all day and stare at a board, and that's not how they're going to learn. So they won't learn anything. I think that if we've got more people who want to see change in education and who aren't, I guess, boring teachers, we're going to see more students educated. We're going to see, you know, just young, great leaders come through. I think another thing that I really want to focus on is it's not all about just, you know, maths and science and English. It's about building who you are as a person in those early years, because those are who they're going to be our future leaders. So they need to know who they are, and just having a really holistic approach to education. I hope that answered your question. That's what I'm going to do, but I can't speak on behalf of everyone.
No, that was a powerhouse answer, Sherice. Yeah, well, I wouldn't have come up with that, so props to you. I want to open up the board a little bit and just kind of want to throw out a question to everybody. But how do you think executives can level the playing field? Sherice, you talked about the education sector. Just now, Nicole, you've talked about the future of learning and online learning. And Paul, you're working in this space currently. Yeah, how do you think executives can level the playing field?
Who are you asking that to, Drew?
Open, whoever wants to go first, brother.
I'm gonna throw a Sherice thing and do what you did to Nicole and throw it back at Nicole as well.
I was actually about to say, I love, again, Paul, so you went off mute to ask a question and then went back on mute again. Oh, I love it. I love it. Look, I think from an executive level and evening this even playing field kind of piece, I think at the moment what happens is that there's a real shift in power, and whenever there's an imbalance or a shift in power, it's really hard for anyone who's not in that powerful position to be able to kind of claw their way up to the, you know, to that executive kind of level, or to kind of get a look in different types of roles. So I think previously we'd kind of kicked around this, you know, this idea of quotas, and you know, I'd kind of shared a bit of a story of, you know, I think it was a panel at, I love the Sydney Writers Festival. It was a panel there of journalists and talking about women, how more women can kind of get into a particular field, and if quotas hadn't existed, then they wouldn't have ever gotten a particular look in. But I know quotas are a real point of contention. It is something that is quite, you know, there's anger that why do we even need a quota? You know, to be able to kind of look at diversity of thought, all sorts of diversity, really. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit, you know, jury's out when it comes to the quota. I think it's nice to be able to kind of create opportunities with quotas, but it can't just stop there. There's more that has to be done than just a quota, particularly if we are talking education, around educating others around the importance of actually having that in the first place.
I might jump in here, Drew, and take that up, Nick, because you've made some really good points there. I'm a big fan of quotas, I really am, but because they are they're a stick, a necessary stick, because not enough people can see the carrot at the end of that stick, and so we need the stick. But the problem is the commentary around things is like everything else these days. Everything is taken in isolation, as opposed to it's a number of things in terms of targets, education, developing pipeline, having people get in and break down barriers, and we need those quotas to break down barriers. And I think we talked about this before, like I'm thinking about the education thing. I loved your answer to that, Sherice. We need more collaboration. We need to think about, we keep on setting people up to compete against each other for a position or for a result. And I don't mean we need to stop all competitive sport at all, because that drives a lot of innovation and drives a lot of improvement, but we also need to bring in far more collaboration. And that's where boards, executive, any level of leadership, either it's a big L or a small L, you just need to bring more people in to listen and collaborate and work on even better solutions. And obviously there's lots of challenges to that. There's lots of, because there's, Nick knows this, is coming from a psychology background, there's people in the way, human beings and their own egos and baggage and everything else like that gets in the way. But that's how we can really level the playing field, is more collaboration, inviting more people into the room and hearing and really listening. And I got to say, that's why we need more women in boardrooms. If we're thinking about that, which is the main cab off the rank, as it were, at the moment, in terms of from a diversity point of view, is that gender equity, because women are way better at listening than men are. Way better, way better. I'll say they're getting way better. I'm done.
Can I just add a little point? It's kind of interesting because, like, in the line of work that I do, obviously I do a lot of work with corporates, and I think one of the other issues is that a lot of the time the problem is seen to be solved with diversity and inclusion training. And so again, that's some of that digital learning that kind of goes out in the world. So that education piece that kind of goes out, and then it's like, oh well, we need to make sure that the images are more representative or diverse. And it's like, well, does it match the reality of your organization? Well, no, it's aspirational. It's like, well, no. Like, if you are going to be investing in those sorts of things, then how can they actually be a little bit more meaningful rather than a band-aid in those sorts of situations as well?
Good point. Really, really good point. What can we do beyond the tokenism and nice fluffy pictures? It's a really good point. Charisse Jackson, I see you hiding away there. What do you think we can do, or what do you think executives can do to help level the playing field?
I was just gonna let these guys take it. They're two really amazing people. I think, like, yesterday we had a bit of a discussion as well, and I think it's all well and good to bring young people or or different types of people to these points of leadership, but it's about making them feel safe once they're there. So it's all well and good to bring a whole bunch of young people to the table or leveling the playing field, but unless they feel completely supported or that safe to be in that space, then what's the point? We're not going to have them there for the long run because they're not going to feel like they can even be there. I think Paul said yesterday, and just now too, like, you got to actually listen to the ideas they're bringing to the table, because like, what's the point if you're just going to have them there again as those tokenistic people on the table? So I think it's all well and good to level the playing field, but unless we're actually listening to them and taking their thoughts and their ideas on board and actually making them feel safe and included in that space, what's the point? That's just my thoughts on that.
Always bringing the strong thoughts, Sherice. Always. Hey, Craig, have we got you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm here.
Beautiful. So glad you could join us. I would love to throw a question to you. What do you think are the most important qualities in a leader?
Okay, so firstly, I think to be a leader means you should be submissive to the ones who you are leading. You have to show that before you can actually command them, you can get their ideas and use what they are asking you to do. Being a leader doesn't mean to just give orders around, but you have to feel what the people you're leading feels like. I can just say I think it's just being a good shepherd, a good person who just listens to others. Stewardship mostly. Yeah, that's what I think are the qualities of a good leader. Just being able to listen to the people who you are leading, and getting out to stand for their point of views out in open.
Really, really strong points, Craig, and I couldn't agree more. I think mentorship is such a critical part of leading, and I'm just echoing what you said. But Paul, I think you've got a future director in the works here. But just saying.
Oh, Drew, if I could say, Craig, when you said the word stewardship, like my heart burst open. You know, that is what it's all about. Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question to Craig? I'd love you to think, how do you defining stewardship? It's a word that is sort of coming back into a more mainstream vernacular. I'd love to know, like, how you define stewarding a business, a group of people, a community, a culture. What does that mean to you?
Can you please repeat the question? My head wasn't.
No, it's all good. I was just, when you talk about stewardship, whether it's of a community, of a business, or an organization, what does really successful stewardship look like? How would you define it?
Okay. As for me, I define stewardship as the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and what can I say? I think it's the way that an individual feels when you put yourself in another person's shoes. And before you take a step, you must think first of what effects are going to cause to the other person. Then you give your orders. And according to a business or an organization, good stewardship is when a boss is able to interact with his workers, not for the workers to fear him, but for the workers to be able to communicate with him, creating a friendly environment, creating a place where everyone can interact without having to fear the boss or someone in charge. Yeah, that is what I think is good stewardship. I hope I've answered you, Paul.
Beautiful. Thanks, Craig. Absolutely beautiful.
Look at everybody. Craig is coming for our jobs. Everybody, I want to throw out the question, one more question, maybe two if we're lucky here. What do CEOs and businesses need to do to build trust with young people and community?
Like I said before, I think that it's just that listening. Like once they're there and once you've got them, like listening and actually doing. It's all well and good to say a million things and to pretend like you're gonna help, or to pretend, yeah, that you're listening, but actually putting in place like things to show that you're making that difference. You know what I mean? I don't know if that really makes sense, but that's what I think. You need to actually prove that you're doing what you say you are.
Yeah, I really love that. And I love that was because I love that Craig kind of raised the strength of listening, and Charisse, that the doing is the other side of it, because we can kind of listen and, you know, hear, and then nothing ever changes or nothing ever happens. And I don't feel as qualified from a young person's kind of perspective, but from the perspective of creating an environment, like a work environment from the crowd's perspective, is that like we have a lot of parents who have come and worked with us because of flexibility. And I look at, just as an example of, you know, we've got Sydney siders, so half of our team is in Sydney and they're in lockdown at the moment, so they're homeschooling. And you know, some of them have kids with special needs, and some of them have, you know, husbands who are running other businesses and they have to kind of help out there, and they've got all of these different kind of components. So that listening and doing is the hearing all of those things, and then maybe reducing their capacity for the next couple of weeks to make sure that they actually have time for that well-being that you were talking about before as well, Sherice. And you know, we have parents put in, like when they're not in lockdown, they put in, when is school pickup? And that's the mums and the dads. You know, when is school pickup? When is school drop off? We know when not to book meetings around those sorts of things as well. And I think it is the same. It's like, what environment are you trying to, who are the people, really getting to know the people that you're looking to kind of engage with? And then what sort of environment do you need to create to actually help them flourish? And study is a really another example of where we're like, we really, 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 really want people to do postgraduate study, but they have a full-time job because they're working with us. So, you know, what can we do then to make sure that they've got time to be able to do those studies? Because we're obviously going to benefit in the long run as well. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Oh, can I come in? I just want to build on Nick there actually, and talk about, you know, we've talked about including and listening and bringing people in and being collaborative. And I think often what can happen when you're bringing in something different into the room to have a part of the conversation is we can stereotype the people as, you know, they're going to have this particular angle, or they're potentially not as worthy to talk about this than everybody else. And I think part of this whole process of bringing people together and being more inclusive at all levels, from education through to senior levels, is we're trying to create a rival image for people. The same way Nick talked about, you know, dad should be at school pickup, you know, as someone who's got an 8-year-old, and I'm one of the few dads who's at school pickup. And it's great when you see other men doing that. And it's the same when you start seeing people with a disability in the boardroom, because you're creating a rival imagery, because we all have a bias towards different groups, saying they're not worthy, they don't belong there, or there's something that they are because of the way they look, sound, whatever. So that's something that we're trying to do, and so many different groups are just trying to just say, hey, just because I'm this doesn't mean I'm that. And just trying to disrupt those stereotypes and challenging those stigmas is such a big step. And that all comes from education, and experiential education, especially in boardrooms and senior level and executive and companies and everything else. That's the only way it's really going to change.
Awesome. Hey, Craig, I want to, just before we wrap up, I want to know what would, if you had a message to tell any leader that's watching this, any decision maker that's watching this, that has the capacity to give stage to some young people, what would your message be for them?
Oh, my message to the leaders, I would encourage them to always be humble, to always remain focused, to always act in a way that everyone would benefit, and to just be a free person, be someone who can be approached by everyone, be someone who loves to stand for what he or she believes in and what the people he or she is leading believes in. Yeah, that's my message.
Beautiful, really strong message, Craig. And thank you, Paul, Nick, Sherice, and Craig for jumping on and sharing so much wonderful insight. I get to go away now and consolidate all the information, which is really great. But yeah, I guess some of the key takeaways for me have been, one, listening, but is such an integral piece of leadership. Two, to go beyond the nice pretty picture and start to show visibility of the impact of your work and care beyond the impact as well. I think go beyond your mission sometimes, and Craig, to your point, stand by your mission. But yes, thank you everybody. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge around Actively. It's been a real joy to be able to sit here with all of you today and share some knowledge. So thank you everybody. Thank you all at home for listening, and take care. See you next time.